Hi there, my name is Rob Verkerk. I'm the Executive and Scientific Director of Alliance for Natural Health International. This Sunday, on the 9th of July 2017, we launched our Smart Guide for Healthy Supermarket Shopping. We had a pretty full audience, and one of the first questions I asked of the audience was, how many people continue to buy most of their foods from the supermarket? We had pretty much all but one person put their hands up. And this is a fact of life. People have moved from doing local shopping to increasingly doing shopping in one place where all the fresh food, all the packaged foods are all present together. And what we're really doing here is looking at 10 specific points that can help people make healthier choices. The first step is really to ensure that the majority of foods that are bought are fresh. And of those foods, we really strongly advocate that people follow the Food for Health guidelines that we produce that are available on our website at ANH-International.org, Food for Health. And you can download the Food and You leaflet, you can order copies of it from us. And critical to this is to be eating predominantly vegetables and to a lesser degree fruits, but to incorporate all the 6 key phytonutrient colors of the spectrum. So that's green, orange, red, yellow, blue, black, purple, and white tan. Really important. And try and eat those in non-bar-coded fresh versions. Absolutely key. Second point, and this is again very important in supermarkets, is to try and make sure all of the vegetables that you buy are grown in soil. The reality is many of the salad vegetables in supermarkets, the tomatoes, the cucumbers, the peppers, the capsicum, and increasingly the bagged baby leaf salads are grown hydroponically in a water-based system, not in a living soil. And those plants do not develop the same degree of phytonutrients, the same vigor, because the living soil is actually critical. It's as critical to a plant as the microbiome of the human being is to our own health. We require a very rich, diverse microbiota within our gut, some 100 trillion or so different bacteria and other microorganisms. A plant also needs a rich living soil. So try and get plants. You can inquire at your supermarket. Everyone has a right to know the provenance of their food. Bottom line is, we believe the best way forward here for salad vegetables is to also incorporate a box scheme from an organic box scheme that is delivered to your door, where you can be guaranteed that those salad vegetables are produced in the proper way, grown in rich living soils. Another key thing is, don't always buy the same foods 12 months of every year. Try and buy local and regional foods. Again, provenance is important, but also seasonal foods. Try and reduce the amount of food you're getting from industrial scale factory farms. You can also buy from the farm gate. You can buy from farmers markets. You can get a box scheme. Try and avoid those barcodes wherever you can. So minimizing the amount of processed food is absolutely critical. Fourth thing is, many people fill up their supermarket trolleys with highly processed foods in which a large part of the energy is coming from highly refined carbs. So really try and cut out the foods with added sugar, the white bread, the pastries, the cakes, the biscuits, the pizza, the white pasta. Replace that with complex sources of carbohydrate coming from vegetables or other complex carbs. Again, through the Alliance for Natural Health, Food for Health guidelines, we're recommending again that people consume a gluten-free diet in order to not push people towards inflammation and problems with gut integrity, which has been associated with high gluten diets for many people. without doing very expensive tests, it is actually impossible to determine the degree of sensitivity that someone has to gluten. And it's increasingly looking like gluten consumed as a regular part of the diet does interfere with one of the key proteins that actually controls the tight junctions in our gut that separates our gut from our body cavity. So really important to do that. Make sure also that you consume enough high-quality protein, healthy fats, and are consuming largely a plant-based diet. When it comes to healthy fats, really important to make sure you have a big diversity. Some of the key elements there is to consume enough monounsaturated fats from things like olive oil, avocados, also healthy saturated fats from things like if you assuming you are still eating meat, obviously if you consume grass-fed animals, beef, also lamb, you will tend to have a much better fatty acid composition, but also consuming the fat that occurs within the meat, from marbled meats, interstitial muscle fat, is much healthier than the fat around the edges. Obviously, eggs also a very good source of fats. Consuming the right kind of fats for cooking as well, making sure that you don't, we'll look at that in a minute, but making sure you don't subject fats to too much heat so that they reach their smoke point is very, very critical. Obviously certain fats, such as coconut oil, lend themselves particularly well to cooking, as does ghee, which is clarified butter used very widely in Indian cooking, and even butter, again, preferably from organic sources. You can consume other plant oils. Flax and hemp are good sources. Really important is not to consume much in the way of rich omega-6, highly processed refined vegetable oils, such as sunflower oil, for example, and cheap low-grade vegetable oils more generally. When it comes to fats as well, another critical component looking at your polyunsaturated fatty acids, the omega fats, is to get the right balance between your omega-6 and omega-3. Anyone consuming a conventional standard American diet, a real Western diet with a lot of processed foods, may be consuming as much as 20 times more omega-6 fatty acid than omega-3 fatty acid. When we're getting our omega-3, particularly from oily fish in the form that we need it, the DHA and the EPA. Obviously, we can also get it from alpha-linoleic acid, which we get it in flax, for example, and hemp, but it needs to be converted. The important thing is to try and get as close as we can to a 1-to-1 ratio. Getting down below a 4-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 is ideal. And the best ways of doing this is to cut down the amount of omega-6 fatty acids in the diets. And again, that's taking out the cheap refined vegetable oils and the margarine, but also trying to consume more monounsaturated fatty acid than not contributing to your polyunsaturated fatty acid at all, but also then consuming more omega-3s, and that can be either from vegetable, but preferably from animal sources, from oily fish, or even taking an omega-3 supplement. And of course, for those who are vegetarian or vegan, you can now get algal omega-3 sources as well that are a great source of omega-3 fatty acids. Our seventh point in our healthy supermarket guide is trying to avoid all animal foods from industrial scale factory farms. One of the best ways of doing this is to make sure that you are buying foods that subscribe to one of several different animal welfare standards that differ from region to region and country to country. If you do this, you're more likely to be consuming foods that animal foods that come from animals that have had a life that involves natural ranging, consuming natural food sources, animals that are less stressed, because a highly stressed animal contribute to additional cortisol that we actually then consume and can add to our own stress and our own inflammation. We also have a situation where in factory farm situations where animals are fed a lot of animal feed, 85% in Europe alone, 85% of all animal feed comes from genetically modified organisms. That's particularly soya and maize. So again, if you do consume animal foods, having grazed animals, wild-fed animals, or organic animals that are fed on non-GM feed is a great way forward, and ensuring that they are obviously animals that come from approved animal welfare situations as well. Absolutely key. When it comes to looking particularly at what children are fed, particularly for their first meal of the day, most kids are still eating cereals. Bottom line is that there's a general understanding that if you have a highly refined cereal, it's pretty much like putting sugar into the body. If you consume whole grain cereals, one of the problems that's occurred of late is that many whole grain cereals are so mechanically processed that actually consuming them is pretty much still like putting sugar into the body, and you get a big blood glucose spike that then creates a crash later on, and the kids are much more likely to want to snack on a refined cereal or sugar-containing food come mid-morning. So really important that people consume less processed whole grain cereals. We still advocate through Food for Health consuming gluten-free cereals and grains wherever possible, or pseudo grains, and also trying to make sure that those foods have minimal amount of sugar. If you do add sugar, it should be from natural fruits if possible, and berries if possible. If you are going to add something extra that's going to offer sweetness, it should preferably be a less refined product, such as a honey, and particularly a raw honey if possible, or molasses. So trying to keep refined sugar out of the kids' diet is absolutely crucial. When it comes to beverages, there are real issues with people consuming huge amounts of calories in their drinks. Obviously, fizzy drinks, pop-type drinks are absolutely out of the equation for anyone who wants to be consuming a healthy diet. And obviously, there's a lot of evidence now to show that consuming fruit juices that were 20 years ago thought to be a very healthy way and a useful way of getting fruits into us are actually a huge source of hidden sugars. And an additional aspect, once you take a juice and you process it, very often the pasteurization process, the addition of additives and preservatives often denatures and reduces the beneficial properties of those fruit drinks as well. So again, we'd advise that they are kept out of the equation. We'd also suggest you don't consume food and drinks with artificial sweeteners in them, because there is more evidence again that they trick the brain when you consume anything that has a high sweetness intensity into the body feeling that it's having sugar put into it. So we can, again, get an insulin response that pushes us towards insulin resistance, which is the precursor to type 2 diabetes. Obviously, alcohol can be a very rich source of calories as well. There is some evidence that consuming certain amounts of alcohol in moderation, particularly with meals, can be beneficial. This may be for a number of reasons. If we look at certain forms of alcohol, particularly red wine, it is rich in polyphenols and resveratrol that can be beneficial. It may also be that the dilation of arteries at the time that we eat assists the nutrient flow into the body from the gut. But again, don't overdo it. Critical thing is that our body, when it comes to beverages and drinks, is looking for water. If we consume, for example, tea and coffee and all the water that we're drinking, we're also consuming diuretics. We need additional water to actually deal with the fact that these beverages are diuretics themselves. So Try and get your water from fresh sources or drink filtered waters. You can actually take out most of the toxins in municipal tap waters by using devices such as reverse osmosis filters. But if you do that, you'll probably want to add minerals back into the water, because otherwise we can become deficient in minerals. And there are many systems that will take all the chemicals and minerals out of water that will also allow you to remineralize the water as well. Finally, let us look at food preparation and cooking guidelines. One of the things that has happened in modern lifestyles is we want to do things quickly, and we're subjecting our foods to huge amounts of heat. Grilling, barbecuing, and frying are three of the ways in which you can create a lot of damage to meat. One of the critical things is how much time do you give it exposed to very high amounts of heat. And if we expose the meat to to high temperatures for long periods of time, it will start to carbonize. It will also start to create a range of chemicals that are known carcinogens, and this includes polyaromatic hydrocarbons, heterocyclic amines. When it comes to high temperatures as well, a lot of people consuming a lot of savory snacks. When we look at starches that are subjected to very high temperatures, they can also form another carcinogen called acrylamide. So if we consume dehydrated snacks rather than high temperature fried or extruded snacks, we can reduce the amount of acrylamide in the diet. We can also move to slower temperatures, slower cooking techniques with lower temperatures over longer periods of time. And it's interesting that there isn't a bacteria known to humans that can actually survive more than 70 degrees for 4 minutes. So again, if you're cooking meats, very useful to have a meat thermometer and to put it into the central coolest part of that meat and check that it actually achieves that temperature for at least 4 minutes. And very often people are inclined to put ovens up to 200 degrees or more and to cook for many, many hours. It may be that the food has actually come out of a refrigerator. It may have even been frozen. So we do have to make sure that the temperature goes through to the central core of that meat. Once an oil has actually reached its smoke point, it will start to form a chemical that is harmful to us called acrolein. It changes the taste of the oil. And again, it's strongly advised that you don't take your fats to smoke point before you start cooking. Keep them below that smoke point. And you may even want to experiment with a slow cooker. So I hope that gives you a bit of an outline of how you can still use your supermarket. You may need to supplement from some other sources, particularly to get your non-factory farmed, your soil-grown vegetables. But if you focus on the bits within the supermarket that are useful, there's still an awful lot of healthy food that can keep you in a very good state of health, even if you do shop regularly within a supermarket. You can come back to our website. You can download our Healthy Supermarket Smart Guide, and we look forward to hearing from you soon. Take care.